staying here with us and for waiting for this presentation. So we will gladly present it, but very shortly and informally. I mean, I don't know how short it will be, but informally. So there will be also, I think, time for discussion, for questions and so forth. So I thought maybe Gaspar said that there are participants, I would say the authors also of the book chapters here sitting with me. This is Tomaž Toporišić, Darko Štrajn, Mojca Puncer and Maja Murnik. And there are more in the book, but they are not here unfortunately today. However, I believe that we'll well represent everybody, so to say. And I hope that we will also make a good promotion so that you will be looking forward to read it. So, maybe in the beginning I would like to say how it came to this idea. Actually, I would say there was I'm the president of the Slovenian Society of Aesthetics since 2011, and the Slovenian Society of Aesthetics actually has a strong focus on avant-gardes. Since the 80s when it was established, there are constantly symposia organized on this topic and so forth, so we never actually stopped being interested in this topic, so we are constantly readdressing it, so to say. And as a member of the how's it called, executive board of the International Association of Aesthetics, we as a society and I as representative proposed to organize the interim conference of the executive committee of the International Association of Aesthetics. That means that each 3 years there is a big congress on aesthetics that can also host 2,000 participants, for instance, as it was in China, in Beijing. But in the meantime, there are conferences organized which are basically meant for the executive committee to meet, but also, I mean, it depends on the organizer, but it could also be an open conference on particular topics so that some themes are addressed. And we as a society proposed that we will host this conference I think initially it was meant in 2000 or 2020, and then there was a COVID issue. So we were organizing it in 2021, but it was not possible to organize it in person, so in a physical form. Thus, there was this conference taking place in a Zoom form. However, there was a big interest in the topic, and the topic was European Avant-Garde 100 years later, so quite the same actually topic. So why did we come to this point? Initially, I think it has to do with anniversary, so that there was 100 years of the Slovenian avant-garde, for instance, the No Mist to Spring, 1920, and we were thinking about these movements that are internationally quite unknown. So we said maybe that would be also nice to put it in international context and address it from this perspective, also put more emphasis on this eastern southern region. So there was great interest in that, in the topic, and there were papers and so forth. However, this is not a collection of papers from that conference, but a selection of papers that will address the topic more precisely, because there are also papers that were maybe a little bit more distant from the central theme. So then actually the work started. I mean, it really took a long time, since 21 and all this time. Also because the International Association of Aesthetics has had the publication of the yearbook of aesthetics. So that was a tradition that the International Association of Aesthetics would publish publications by national societies and so forth, somebody in the name of that. on certain topics, and that would be printed, and then when there would be a congress, there would be these books that would be delivered. However, when I was thinking about this form of publication, I thought this is not really appropriate form for such a thing, because, I mean, we live in this culture that is not, I prefer printed books. However, in that case, those books would be printed and delivered at the congresses, while these copies delivered worldwide would be more or less on the side of the author or the producer of the book, which would be the person who would be the initiator. For instance, in that case, that would be me, that would have to take care of the publication of the book, also considering the cost of the print and so forth. And there was no project behind that that would be covering the cost of that project. So that was one thing. The other thing was that I think that this format is also quite invisible, so to say, for the public outside of this circle of International Association of Aesthetics. So I thought it should be more global, so to say, something that is more available. And the third thing, also for the authors, I think it's important that they publish it somewhere where they could say, I mean, this is a relevant publication and not something that is, you know, just appeared in Beijing when there was a congress and then you cannot get it any longer. So that's a problem. So because of that, we started to talk about the possible maybe establishment of a new journal or a new book series or something with some renowned publisher. As the International Association of Aesthetics, so therefore we established this board, which then became the board of the editors of the book series Transcultural Aesthetics, which we contracted with Brill. So, and therefore this is actually the first book from this series. So the series is Transcultural Aesthetics, and the basic idea behind that was that we also want to put emphasis on the cultural context, also to emphasize the, so to say, neglected contexts and regions, also put emphasis on the geopolitical issues and the kind of things that we thought were not that much, I mean, didn't get enough attention. Brill already has a book series on avant-gardes, and that is European Avant-Garde and Modernism Studies, which is actually a series that accompanies the network, European Avant-Garde and Modernism Studies, which organizes conferences on avant-gardes each 2 years, and this year it just took place in Krakow. Gaspar was also there, as well as I was, and Leo Krift from our society. And the topic this year was avant-garde and war. So there is a topic, and there are many papers. For instance, this year it was 210 or something like that. So, so that is one context where the avant-gardes are, we could say, constantly addressed in the colloquium, in the symposium, as well as in the book publications, which are actually selected papers based on this conference papers. So this is a new book series that, as a series, does not have to do with avant-gardes, but as I said, it's a broader context. But for instance, the last one is by Wolfgang Wilsch, which also addresses this transculturality in art. So how he has this thesis that we have never been actually anything else than transculturals, because we are, these cultures are always influencing each other and being part of some, so to say, cultural achievements, so to say. So then, now if we go to the book. So the book actually, I think it's quite a nice volume, has many book chapters, and it's actually organized into 5 parts. And these parts have to do with topics that I shortly mentioned, but maybe just to go through that. basically the topic, the European Avant-Garde 100 years later, it implies that, so we have an anniversary, so there is 100 years after, which implies that, of course, the avant-garde took place in the history, somewhere in the history around 1920. Why? Because there are, for instance, the theory of Peter Burger, who speaks about historical avant-garde, putting the emphasis on the historic avant-garde as the only true avant-garde. Neo-avant-garde is a kind of repetition, a kind of readdressing of it. So, from this perspective, we could speak about, I mean, what does this returning to this avant-garde, if we consider it like that, what does it mean? I mean, why do we return constantly? And the other question, does it mean only a pale repetition or repetition of the questions, or are we putting this question in a new context? Are we opening new questions? Do we speak about avant-garde also in contemporaneity? Or are there differences between neo-avant-gardes, retro-utopianism and other sorts of movements that have to do with avant-gardes from the past, or maybe we consider them avant-gardistic, but they are taking place later. So what does this continuous interest in avant-garde mean, actually? Does it mean something as a kind of a nostalgia? Because there are some theoretical stances that speak about the only true avant-garde movement is actually taking in this distant past, while afterwards we don't have so genuine or radical or what sort of art that we could consider so serious. Today we already opened the question, which I also address in these books, which is the question of subversiveness, of being critical, or what is this stance in contemporaneity. Maybe we can speak about the resistance as a stance of art, instead of being subversive or really rebellious, as maybe we found some cases in the historical avant-garde. So, and why do we speak about these different sort of forms? Does it have to do with different structure of power relations, or what can art do today, or why are we constantly readdressing this question of avant-gardeness? So the first part of this book actually has to do with this, so to say, with temporality, with the questions of not linearity, but of readdressing, of constant interest in that, of contemporary approaches that could be considered as avant-garde, as for instance some critical approaches, as tactical media, and more activist approaches. Here we have papers by Tarius Miller, Sasha Brum, and from my paper. And then we have the next chapter that has to do, what I would say, with geopolitics and revisions of history, which I think is also important. That was also exposed today. So the space, the regions, this part of Europe, ex-Yugoslavia, Southeastern Europe, and the tension that there is in the global terms to this region, not only to the artistic practices, but also to the theories. So I thought this is also important. For instance, Alexander Flakar was mentioned today, Dusan Perevec. I mean, some theoreticians that were very important in this region, but are internationally, we could say, still more or less unknown. Then we have, we have in this part, we have Miško Šovaković, Tomaž Topolišić, and then we have the neglected genres and media of the avant-garde. Here we have Lev Kreeft speaking about avant-garde manifesto, which is also an important topic. Ernest Zhinko focusing on avant-garde cinema of the 20s. And then we have Expressionism Reconsidered. Darko Stein has a chapter here, and Valentina Hribar-Sorčan, who is writing about Franz Marc's animal paintings from philosophical perspective. And then the final part, post-gravity art, Mojca Puncer and Maja Murnik, who are both here, both actually speaking about what they say, post-gravity art or space art, Dragan Živadinov and his colleagues. They will tell you more about their contributions. I think that's more or less it, what I wanted to say, but I see that I already took a lot of time, sorry. So I would like to...
Okay, you edited the books.
Okay, so...
You will be brief then.
Yeah, so thank you for your attention. Now I would give the word, I think we could make this order. And I see that you already, you already sit
I'm chapter 5.
In the chapter. Okay.
The second part. Basically, I concentrated on. I put it the title Trieste, Ljubljana, Zagreb, Burgas, like Orient Express who went to Turkey. But basically, it is about the avant-garde and about the multiple and complicated relations between the theater avant-gardes in Central Europe. So basically, it's also one of the topics I'm going to discuss on this symposium. But I concentrate in this chapter on the historical avant-gardes. And I deliberately took Trieste as a starting point because Trieste was really the most lively part, basically, probably during that time. So I will be short. This is it, and you can read it. It's I think that not my part, but I think that to give you feedback of a writer of one of the chapters, I think it's really a very interesting book for us, but not only for us who are basically very much into the history of the Central European avant-garde, but I think it could be also interesting for the people who look at the history more vertically. But Sasha Brill is basically also has a big project, I think, at the moment, who is trying to redefine the notions of centrality and periphery. So basically, it's something which is very in at the moment. This would be fun.
Okay. Well, maybe I will just remind us that the very concept of avant-garde is, I should not use the word complex, but it is quite convoluted. Well, I would say that what is the key to understand the avant-garde is that it is always a matter of invention and reinvention.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say rhizomatically, it comes from what Nietzsche indicated, and that was Nietzsche indicated in his genealogy of morals, that the art, the relationship between spectator and creator has turned around. So opposing the Kant's aesthetic standpoint, which was directed towards the pleasure or disinterested gaze of the spectator, the new phase of art brings us to a different relationship in this confrontation between spectator and creator. And then later on, George Agamben is most clearly articulated in his let's say comment that it is actually this new let's say constellation between within the art makes art political. So the art cannot be non-political anymore after this break, let's say. And so the avant-garde is based in this, I would say, that it is the most political of all let's let's say, genres, if it's possible to say that, because of course we have still the traditional art and so on, but avant-garde takes a special mission, and that's, well, not to be too long, I would, in my paper, I addressed the question of evil, and I based my let's say my research on well, different things, but I would just concentrate on Thomas Elsasser's research about the Weimar cinema, and in what I found that it is maybe not stressed enough is that there was a close relationship between the expressionist cinema and expressionism in other forms of art, in painting and in literature. And so in this context then I was most interested in the movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which in a way could be understood today as a metaphor of impossibility of finding the way out of irrational world. Okay.
Thank you. I think I don't need to give the words.
Yeah, no, I'm just preparing myself. So I'm glad that I'm
So
part.
you didn't hear what I said?
I did.
She did. That's why she's preparing now. She needs a few minutes.
May I?
Yes. Sorry.
So I'm glad that I'm part of this book and that I'm sharing a special chapter with Maya about post-gravity art. This is something. So you can notice that this project of Dragan Živadinov, Nordung project, this 50 years theater piece, is my fascination. The project is complex enough that I can discover it from different angles. And in this paper, titled The Avant-Garde Politics of Time, the Case of Post-Gravity Art, I focused on the question of time. I noticed that the question of time is not so often addressed. That's why I observe it from different angles, from different perspectives, using different philosophical concepts. So emphasis is on philosophical approaches. So for example, I use particular Marxist Benjaminian concept of time on one hand, and on the other Nietzsche-Deleuzian post-structuralist concept of time. I, for example, also ask the question about two common ways of thinking about time. So this is subjective or psychological time on one hand, and objective or physical time measured by clocks. So we have here behind this maybe forgotten debate between the renowned philosophers Henry Bergson and physicist Albert Einstein. So here is big disagreement between these two figures and so on. But what is the main point or ambition of my research is to demonstrate or to ask the question if this Nordung project is a kind of specific avant-garde politics of time. And my answer is, so this is really a short summary of this, that yeah, this project demonstrates that this is avant-garde politics of time as a kind of chronopolitics which is always out of joint. So is contra the dominant linear historical flow. So, thank you. Shortly.
I will continue then. my chapter titled Bodies in Freedom, like words in freedom, futurist example of poetry, and from futurist aerial theater to space art. It is addressing the conceptual legacy of futurist theater, namely teatro aereo, or aerial theater, where the predecessors of art that is addressing the issue of gravity and is striving to take its feet off the ground can be found. The sky there became a new theatrical stage, and where the airplanes are the actors. And then the chapter combines several philosophical perspectives, for example, from Merleau-Ponty, Paul Virilio, and several others. And art, also the theoreticians from art history and performance studies, and includes art examples as well. And it also starts from the Heideggerian notion of technology. After him, technology is not a neutral tool, but is essentially, and also the artworks are essentially embedded in social, political, and cultural and artistic context. The chapter discusses mainly 4 issues. The problem of gravity. The gravity is the force that obstructs the liberation of man, of art and thinking. This is also Giovannino's concept of post-gravity art, and of several others, for example, Eduardo Katz's notion of space poetry. The second notions are the extensions of body and the relating issue of technology. All these satellites, probes, interfaces, avatars can be understood as the extensions of the body, and so they extend human perception, that human's body becomes a new area of sensitivity. The third are the aspects of scientific abstractions, because when we are talking about space and outer space in particular, we are talking about abstract and constructed space, which is inaccessible to our naked eye perception. So we should use a large amount of scientific data, transmit it and translate it into visualizations, abstract it, and so on. And the third issue are the political and social aspects of liberation from gravity. Here there are addressed civil initiatives like autonomous astronauts initiative, or the culturalization of space, which is also Giovannino and post-gravity art initiative. And all these emphasize social and political aspects of liberation from gravity, and they seek to colonize outer space in a more democratic way. So, in brief.
Thank you Maja, thank you Mojca, thank you Darko, thank you Tomasz.
Thank you, Polona.
So I think we did our job, I mean the basic presentation, but of course now we are looking forward to your comments, questions, critiques.
Congratulations for the book.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that this project is close to something that Alexandra was speaking at the beginning, to these micro-histories that should be done?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we also talked about this topic in Krakow. This editor of the Nordic Avant-Garde is not only her, Tanya, and her colleagues. They were doing that kind of series or many volumes of books with Brill on the Nordic avant-gardes, and there was also this initiative that there should be not only one book but kind of a series or maybe a volume first addressing particularly this region and this space and this history. So it was mentioned already today, but also in this introduction I mentioned other books and I put in context what has already been done and so forth. So of course one of the important contributions is Impossible Histories by Miško Šovaković and Dubravka Đurić, where maybe there is not that much of focus on art from our particular space and history. So, and of course there is so much more that has to be said. I mean, the initial idea, as I said, it has to do with what was going on here and so forth, and putting emphasis. I mean, also speaking about things that are not so well known and constantly readdressed and already, 1,000 times readdressed by others and in other contexts. So putting emphasis on other aspects that maybe were not that were neglected, including this geopolitical issue. But it's not a book on avant-gardes from this region. That's just one of the so to say aspects and one of the dimensions. However, you saw that the authors are also doing their job in enlightening the artistic practices, the theories here, readdressing the theories that, or reconsidering some theories that were relevant already 100 years in the past, but maybe have their actuality also in their contemporaneity.
I see this book, if I may say, because Darko, he was here in the 80s, and they did one of the first congresses about the avant-gardes in Ljubljana, which was organized by the Slovene Society of Aesthetics, and so on. And this is one of the, this was one of the, it was basically the first initiative, but a very strong initiative, because it was within the scope of the International Society of Aesthetics. So I think this is one. This book is basically the fruit of the work which began in the 1980s, which is very interesting because the 1980s were also the time of the retro avant-garde in Slovenia. But you started before, but then they appeared they were still not recognized and so on. So I think the question is how to make those impossible histories, to use the word, the title of Miško Šovaković, known in very different ways. This is one of the good ways. The other book will be presented tomorrow. It is basically the lexicon of Central and Eastern European avant-gardes, which was a project which was initiated by the Polish Theatre Institute, and basically it was another way of historizing the avant-gardes, not from a perspective of Berlin, Leuven, or one of the centers of the which Alexander was speaking of today, but from another perspective. But the initiative of this second project was in a way similar to this one. It was getting to know each other, but what people from Eastern and Central Europe, from the Theatre Institute, suddenly realized that they don't know anything about the theatre avant-gardes in neighboring country, that they know a lot about Marinetti, a lot about what was going on in Fiume, in Trieste, in Udine, in Venezia, and so on, but they don't know anything about it. So it's basically trying to find this, what Piotrowski would say, horizontal history or weak histories, and so on and so on. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just to continue what you started. It is that I would say that this history is dissipating, because this disciplinary histories like art history, I don't know, also film history. There are these let's say, specifically defined histories are becoming impossible, and because we are getting more and more this transdisciplinary, which reflects also transculturality and so on, we have more and more these new perspectives, like, I don't know, provided by cultural studies, all sorts of studies. So from these new perspectives, there are new recognitions of different appearances in history and so on. So, for instance, I just can mention I've got a book from my friend Wolfgang Müller-Funk from Austria. They just published also a book about Central European and what is it? Western Balkan, something like that. I don't know exactly now the title, but it is published in German, and it is addressed to this space. And there are also some Yugoslav authors implied in that. Maybe I don't know what will be the impact of this book, because it is published in German. Who speaks German anymore? But things are really developing, so I wouldn't be so so pessimistic as Alexandra. And yeah, I would say that things are really developing, and this transculturality, I think also our friend from the International Association of Aesthetic, Wolfgang Welch, was the one who started this concept of transculturality. Yeah, so this is not only a concept, this is a theory which works in the
contemporary reality, so to say.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think, for instance, also the mentioned Krakow conference, there was a panel, Gansberg had a paper, I had a paper, and our colleagues Leo Krift and Christina Franch, no, we were not in the same, but I mean, they titled it Balkan Avant-Garde or something like that. So I want to say that there were people who came, for instance, from the Nordic countries, and they were really interested in what was going on, because for this reason, because they don't know anything about it. But they thought, I mean, they are interested in the avant-garde, in the avant-garde movements. They know, and as Tomasz said, they know a lot about Mariniti and so forth, but they don't know about art from this region. So, I mean, I would
basically it's the same region as Mariniti, because Mariniti's first errata was in Trieste, so it's
but somehow it's neglected. Yeah, but somehow it's neglected.
Everybody is forgetting. Nobody better know that you're so near to Trieste.
Yeah. So, so I think that, I mean, partly I would agree with Alexandra, so that that this is true. Yeah, that many art projects, artists, and movements and so forth from this are still quite neglected, and that it's important that there are projects that enlighten the cultural practices, the theories, and so forth. I mean, especially now when the cases from the West, so to say, are so well discussed from so many perspectives, and then we have a whole this, so to say, second world, which is what did she say that? Yeah, she said it. Yeah, the Venice Biennale. So how there is big interest in this post-colonial topic. That also in the conference in Krakow. Post-colonialism and these topics and so forth, of course, related to the third world, but the second world is like, again, kind of
just one sentence, you know, she talked about East and West, but the curator of the Venice Biennale was thinking in terms of North and South.
And I would add one thing. It's important to mention this generational approach, so from the beginnings of society, of aesthetics, and so on. And now for younger generation, it's obvious how is this post-humanist turn presented. We also we saw this on this last example. I forgot the name of this referee. Yeah. So in her case, this weak avant-garde concept related to ecological issues, and then also technological issues in relation to artificial intelligence. This is also the topic that you, Narvika and Aleš, addressed. So I think this is also something that gives the future to research of avant-garde.
Yeah, sure, that's important. And the book also reflects this, I would say, turn to this transdisciplinarity or transculturality, also transhumanism and so forth. So it's not so strictly based in what used to be considered as aesthetics in the sense of philosophy of art in the traditional sense.
Not only feminist.
Some other comments or?
Maybe just a comment, because I think we're quite privileged to live in this part of the world. You know, like Tamar said, that in Trieste, Mariiniki was active. But for instance, I've lived in this Friulian region for some time now, you know, and there, you know, there's no like east-west stuff. It's about, you know, having this Friulian culture, 2 million speakers, without any like schools and infrastructure, but basically they have like the key Italian artist, Pasolini, you know, as a Friulian, as a person writing in Friulian language, as a person like trying to develop high Friulian culture. So, you know, it's, and then of course, like Gorica and Udine, you know, these regions, or like Casarsa, where Pasolini's mother comes from, they're not really linked to Trieste. So, you know, there's like two worlds. Also Trieste and the coast is not like, it's not, Friulian is not spoken in that area, because they're like inland. So, you know, it's really an interesting space, you know, where everything mixes, and we are here, you know, present.
Yeah, I agree that it's.
Yeah, we're completely ignorant about this yet. Yeah. Although now it's a lot of theater is produced in Friulano. All Italians are learning. I mean, the theatrical people in Italy are learning Friulano in order to be able to perform in the Centro Spettacoli in Udine and so on and so on. It's very, very interesting, this region. I agree with you. You know much more about it than me, but from what I smell till now.
Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, I think we.
Well, there are, but we will stop.
Well, don't allow any. So, okay, then we can continue informally later or in the next 2 days when we will still be around, I believe. Thank you very much for being here, for paying attention, and you're welcome to read the book.